Welcome to the podcast, Nicole Grelecki. I am so excited you are here today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm just going to share with the listeners a little bit about you before we get started in our conversation. So, Nicole Grelecki is a mother, wife, and entrepreneur. She's on a mission to do her part to make this world a better place. When she's not playing Uber driver, sports fan, volleyball coach, Girl Scout leader, and community servant, she is hard at work helping preteens and teens and their families learn the life skills they need to stay connected to their families and community, and more importantly, to become leaders in their own lives. Her experience as a lifelong athlete, retired police officer, daughter, sister, aunt, certified teen coach, and professional multitasker has set her up for this chapter in her life, helping her own preteen and teen daughters feel prepared to shine their own light in this world. Welcome, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm just thinking when I'm reading through that, I was like, oh my gosh, what a superwoman. But we also have some things in common. And I'm just like reading, I'm like, oh, athlete, yes, check that. We are a sports family. So there's lots of sitting in the bleachers. I've done my share of coaching. My husband does his share of coaching, Uber driver. And I'm assuming like that to me is driving my kids around to all of their practices, all of their activities. I've had kids in Girl Scouts. I think I've done that a little bit that before, community work, it's just all of that. So I feel really connected to you. And I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old at home. So I'm in that preteen moment. I know you have daughters. One of mine is a girl and one's a boy. So I don't know how different that is, but I think that's all the same, like kind of life skills that we
Yeah,
want our kids to learn.
yeah,
So
exactly.
awesome. I'm like, oh, okay, let's get started. But is there any of your past experiences that really have kind of set you up for this chapter?
Honestly, it's a really good question, and it's something I think about a lot because I think when I was growing up, I was mad that my parents got divorced when I was so young. Because I had to take care of myself. I had to take care of myself a lot when I was young.
Mhm.
However, when I went to college and lived by myself afterwards, I realized that all of my skills set me up for early success,
Mhm. Mhm.
because I had those responsibilities so early. I've actually instilled them in my own daughters, not even having a divorced parents, right?
Mhm.
I think that it's possible with divorced parents or without divorced
Oh
parents. I
yeah.
think one parent can help shape and guide your kids to have the life skills to propel them forward,
Mhm.
um, at an early age, right? Like, a lot of times kids don't think about, parents, I think parents don't think about how early it starts now, right?
Oh yeah. Oh
Mine
yeah.
started really young. Okay, mine started really young, and I don't think that is what I try to give to my kids, but what I do try to give to my kids are the, like, I knew how to do things before everybody else did,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And so that's kind of been something in my life that I've really grasped onto, is that the my responsibilities set me up to know more, which means
Mhm.
it kind of like puts me in a responsibility and a leader position,
Yeah.
which I kind of liked. I thrive in that position. And so for me, that has helped me, um, kind of always feeling like I have control, right?
Mhm.
In an
Yep. Yep.
uncontrollable world, in an uncontrollable world, feeling like I was a leader of myself first, right?
Mhm.
Being able
Yep.
to take care of myself, being able to wake myself up, make my own food. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
there was nights that, my parents had other things to do, and so I would have to put myself to bed sometimes. But those,
Mhm.
now having preteens, because I have 11 and 12-year-olds,
Okay.
I realized that, like, oh, that is not so easy. That is a skill that we need to teach and or help them claim for their own, and let them
Right.
them like let them. fail or succeeded at, right? And
It's
so I've taken these, I've talked about this with you before, previously, but like this idea of flipping it. So like
mhm,
anything negative that I have felt, or the story that I've told myself before,
mhm,
um, I literally look at it from a different vantage point, and I'm like, oh, but how did that help me? Because even though it was bad, I have to remember that anything good after that also couldn't be possible if that one thing didn't happen. And that
mhm.
one thing has helped me being like, oh, yeah, learning how to brown meat at a young age like helps me now teach
Right.
my own kids, hey, this is an important skill.
Yes.
Um so like yesterday when I went to work, I set all of the taco meat and all of the stuff out and set it up for them to make, because it's just one of those skills that you really don't think about,
Right.
um of teaching, but is so important with when it comes to like nutrition,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And there's all these little things that we can teach our kids that will help them take care of themselves, right?
Right. Right. Oh my gosh.
So that was my life experience. The life experience of looking at all I've learned through a positive light, I
Mhm.
guess,
Yeah.
and not focusing on the negative and choosing to focus on, what is the gift that it gave me? Because even though it might have been bad,
Mhm.
there's also a gift hidden inside of there.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I mean, you've said so many gems in there. I mean, I'm just like my brain is going because I also have older kids that are in college and beyond. And so it's fun to hear them talk about the skills that they've learned setting an alarm, making yourself breakfast, getting out, like planning the day. Oh my gosh, I've got a whiteboard that I've used for years that had the calendar on it. Finally, sort of color coded kids at some point, but they'll look at it like, what's going on today? And they have that idea. And every night they, oh, what's going on tomorrow? So they can kind of plan ahead. But also, they realize that other kids may not have gotten those kind of skills like, "Oh, mom, they don't even know how to run a mixer,"
yeah,
And I'm like, "Oh, I guess we just baked a lot,
yeah,
and they do." And I'm actually looking to my kids now for recipes.
yeah,
But the other things that you're talking about is just looking at through everything is a learning experience,
yes,
and you can choose the meaning of how this experience is for you. You can make it bad and you could make it awful, or you can take, what can I learn from this? Like, is there a positive thing from here? And maybe it's not that positive for today,
right.
but maybe for tomorrow, the weeks, months, years ahead. It's like, oh crap, my parents are gone. I got to make my own supper, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this is something my sisters talk about a lot. I have three
Mhm.
older sisters. And they now are like, well, what's the gift? And they like point to me, right? Because they're like, we know that's what you're gonna say. And trust me, this is work that I've been doing over the last, I don't know, how long have we known each other?
Yeah,
Three and a
3
half
years. Yep,
years
yeah.
now. And so it it is a skill to be able to do it. And I was not there, right?
Yeah.
I went through Tony Robbins. I was stuck in my head, stuck in bed, in pain, extremely overweight. I was all of those things. And this is after, being permanently disabled from a job, then immediately having kids for 3 years.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I was there. And I guess what I'm saying is like, it doesn't matter what phase you're in. It doesn't matter if you're perfectly healthy and
Mhm.
maybe you just have some bad habits, or you're telling yourself some bad stories and you're focusing on them, right?
Right.
But what I learned, and one of the key learns, is every time we focus on the bad of something or a bad of an experience and we bring it to the present, each time you bring it, your body doesn't know the difference. And that if you haven't flipped it, if you haven't flipped that story, if you haven't healed that story of the bad and focused on the good of like, if that had not happened, all this other goodness would not be happening.
Yes. Yes.
And then you actually get stuck right back where you were
Mhm.
in the past.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when if for those people that like get together with your old friends and then you talk
Mhm.
about all the old bad things, your body experiences the same thing over and over again.
Right. Right.
So it's also that conscious choice to, choose to be around different people and
Right.
surround yourself with different people, making that choice. When you make this choice to continue to look in for the good in everything, you're going to find some
Mm.
resistance.
Yeah. Yep.
You're going to find resistance against this way of thinking, but I can tell you it has transformed my entire life. My relationships with my own family, my three sisters and my mom,
Mhm.
my personal life with my kids and my
Mhm.
husband, but then also the the other families that I'm able to help as well with this type of thinking. Some people think it's hokey. For me, it it's almost as good as fact,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You choose to stay there or you choose to help it motivate you forward.
Right.
And it
Right.
really is just a choice.
It is. I think that we have to remember that we're in control of what we choose,
Mhm.
and we have to realize that there are consequences either way, positive or negative. They're the
Mhm.
results that you want or that you're looking for are basically your choices leading
Mhm.
up to that point. And so you always have the power to choose.
Yes. I remember, and you may think this is funny, but so during pregnancy,
Mhm.
I always anybody who's currently pregnant, you read all the books and you're like terrified of all the bad things that can possibly happen, right? Like if you follow everything, it can literally drive you crazy. And so
Mhm.
my best advice is choose five things because you can only hold something with one hand, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because you have to do something with your other hand. So you only have one hand to choose. Choose five things to grab onto and believe. Because it doesn't matter what you choose, doesn't matter what you choose, you will always find evidence for it.
Mhm.
You'll find evidence for the bad and you will find evidence for the good, but which one is going to continue to move you forward
Mhm. Yep.
more times than not is the good.
Oh yeah.
And what feels good, like you actually have a choice to help you like decide what feels better for you.
Right. Right. And that choice that has a little bit of light of hope in it really propels people forward. It makes people want to get up in the morning and get out of bed and go do something and try something, that there's hope for the future, that there's something going to be better out there. So if you choose that route, it's going to be better.
Yeah. And what's coming to mind for me right now is, thinking like, well, people say that I can't do things.
Yeah.
And sometimes we feel that we can't do
Right.
things.
Right.
And I just was talking about this in volleyball the other day that the difference between can't and can is a T. That's it. And you have a choice to kick the T. And I tell the story often about when I've been injured at work,
Hmm.
both my shoulders, elbow, I've had 4 surgeries. And there was a point in physical therapy where I truly thought that I could not do something.
Hmm.
And I was right. Right? I was in the
Yep.
middle of therapy. She's setting me up. I knew I couldn't do it. Like as soon as she set me up, I'm on my arms. She's asking me to do something. And I'm like, I'm going to fall. I said, but I refused to say I couldn't, refused
Hmm.
to say I can't, even though I was thinking it. I refused to say I can't because my physical therapist didn't believe in it. Right.
Yep.
And so there was a moment that I was like, okay, either I'm going to prove myself right, or I'm going to prove myself wrong, but I'd rather go down trying.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Right. I want to be brave enough to fail. I
Hmm.
want to be brave enough to do that. And I remember falling flat on my face. But I left, she left. She's like, oh, we have a little bit more work to do, but that's the key. Doesn't mean that we can't forever.
Right.
It meant that I couldn't in that moment. But what was great for us is like we knew what then we needed to work on.
Hmm.
And it was
Yep.
just, I can't yet. I
Yep.
can't yet. That power of yet is so powerful.
It is.
And when you feel that you can't do something, ask yourself, is it that you can't or just that you can't yet? And there's more growth that needs to be done.
Right.
And
Right.
so giving that to my volleyball players, they're like, I often, because many of them are new,
Hmm.
I can't do that. I said, well, the moment that you can is when you choose to stop saying I can't.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then they're
Yep.
like, oh, You have to choose to stop saying it, right? Then
Right.
take action towards succeeding whatever you want. But you have to be brave enough
Right.
to make a few mistakes along the way. And it's okay. Like this idea that mistakes are bad, like to
Mhm.
me, mistakes are necessary.
Oh, yeah.
We need them to get the feedback, right? Like
Right.
if we had hated mistakes, then we would have never
Yeah.
to crawling. We had never moved to walking. We have never rode our bike. And I know that sounds so simple, but like we've all done that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right.
In some way, shape, or form, we've all been there.
Oh,
We all know that type of failure, and that life is literally that simple in failure.
yeah.
You can be brave enough to be bad at something, choose to believe in the power of, yeah, I can't do that
Mhm.
yet,
Right.
because there are going to be times when you can't do something.
Yes. Yeah. Not yet.
Are you going to trust yourself enough to prove it to yourself, or are you going to trust somebody else's opinion?
Right. Right. And I just love the volleyball. Like I used to coach that and the junior high. So it's just like, I'm like, realize that every point is somebody's mistake.
Yes.
I mean, that's how they score points.
Yes.
Somebody screws up. And so we've screwed up how many times? That's okay. Let's just screw up less than the other team. And also I think people have this big negative weight to the word failure.
Yeah.
And if we can see failure as like the first attempt in learning, usually requires editing. That's how I define failure. So it's the first attempt in learning. So we have to try something first to know whether or not we're able to do it, or we need to grow and work on something a little bit before that, before we can really succeed at it.
Yeah. So I have no idea why this story is coming to mind. I'm thinking of my dad at the moment, but he was a guy that if something came in a box, nothing was never broken, right? Like we've all gotten the box, and like there's no hole where it says there's supposed to be a hole and you're supposed to put the screw, like especially if you have kids, you've
Right.
put together 1,000 things, okay? And are you the person that like when you find there's not a hole where there should be a hole, do you return the whole product, or do you figure it out? My dad
Mhm.
was a guy, and this is a skill that he taught me, and it drives my husband crazy sometimes. He's like, it's broken, send it back. I'm like, I am not undoing all of this and then trying to fit it back in the box to send. No, what can I do to make this work as good as it would have? You wouldn't even know the difference,
Right.
right? Like I
Right.
just remember that plastic car thing. Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This plastic car, I don't know, some
Yeah.
holiday, I'm trying to put it together and there's no hole. Okay. What do you do in that moment? And that is life. Like
Right.
I'm looking at this car, like laughing, being like, this is life. Your
Exactly.
life, if you believe that your life comes in a box and it's going to come with all the parts and pieces, you're wrong.
And the instructions.
Instructions, right? Yeah, God forbid you don't even get it. That happens. I mean, we've
Right.
got it, right? You've
Right.
gotten the toy without the instructions in it. Are you going to figure it out? Or are you going to try, like, spend twice as much time because you know it doesn't go into the box the same?
Right. No, you're never going to put it back in the box the way you took it out.
If you're lucky to even get it close, especially those goofy cars, like they're like in the box,
Yes. Like, how did
all
they?
the little things. Yeah. Or are you gonna try to figure it out?
Mhm.
You know, yeah, it's funny. Thanks, Dad, for that story. But there's so much truth to that.
Oh,
And there's
yeah.
so many times in life that you just have to figure it out. We call it a make it work moment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we say it in our house all the time. Okay, we don't have XYZ. It's a make it work moment.
Yep.
Who's is it going to be good enough for us? Right. And
Right.
sometimes this one thing that you focus so much time on. I mean, how much time have you lost on something that you're trying to put together? Plans, schedules, something, carpooling, something, right? Like
Right.
just the other day, was I had school call me. I was like, that's weird that school's calling. And they're like, your Girl Scouts are here. And I was like, okay, cool. Can you hold them there? I'll be there in a minute. And so I show up and I was like, oh, I dropped the ball on this. And she's like, you actually admitted to that? And I said,
I must have. You already
I,
told me.
like people screw up. And she's like, I love that. And it's okay.
It
Like
is.
people embrace the fact that you just screwed up.
Yeah.
And it's
And it's
okay.
okay. Life goes on.
Yeah.
It wasn't the end of the world.
No, it wasn't. And they learn to be patient. Like think of all the, and I truly always feel it. Like, well, what was the life lesson? Oh, the life lesson is adults screw up.
Mm-hmm.
And I am okay with being the example of that, right? Because it allows them to see that they can screw up too.
Right.
And
Right.
as a parent, then we realize that we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be
Mhm.
perfect guides. We don't have to be perfect beings. We don't have to be perfect parents.
Right.
We could admit when we screw up,
Yeah.
which, and this is the flip side of that, allows your kids to admit that they
Mhm.
screwed up. And that was one thing that, like, I don't feel like my parents did very well, was
Mhm.
to
Yep.
admit wrong or made a mistake or whatever. You
Mhm.
tried something, you drilled the hole, you messed it up more.
Yep.
It happens, right?
Right.
Um, but that is something that I feel has allowed my communication with my own preteen daughters, right? And
Mhm.
then it leads to forgiveness.
Yes.
It just leads, like, you forgot me at school. Yeah, I screwed up. Like we're doing 1,000 things.
Mhm.
I will get you. You will be safe. Thank you for calling me.
Yes.
And then on the flip side, yeah, mom, it's okay. I went and got to play with my friends.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect.
You
Yep.
know?
Yep. Exactly. So I want to hear a little bit more about what you're doing right now with teens and preteens, because we're talking a lot about these life skills. And I
Mhm.
really feel like it's really important, like you're talking about, is showing kids that everything is figure outable. And I know that came from somewhere and I can't think of the gal's name, but everything is figure outable. We need to learn those problem solving skills. And we
Mhm.
need to learn that not everybody is perfect. Hello, nobody's perfect, so we can screw up and it's okay to admit it.
Yep.
And so these are all life skills. So what are you really doing right now to help teens and preteens with this?
So, one of the biggest things is to be a leader in your own life, to find out what you are, right? Your
Mhm.
strongest thing that you can say to yourself is that I am something, right? So, my company is called Healthy Pie with a PI, um,
Mhm.
to find your infinite possibilities in I. I am whatever you are, whatever, light you're going to shine in this world. You are meant to be here and you are enough. And
Mhm.
so the skills that I teach kids or help them learn is for them to become action takers in their own life.
Mhm.
Okay, become leaders in their own life. I think a lot of people are kind of misperceive what I try to do, in the sense that, yes, I am a volleyball coach and that is a team sport.
Mhm.
But we have to believe in ourselves as well. We have
Yep.
to have our own mindset, right? In order to even start to think about becoming a part of a team.
Mhm.
So the life skills that I teach is to help kids, like literally how I framed it is like when you wake up in the morning to when you lay your head on the pillow at night.
Mhm.
What is important, right? So important of I teach babysitting skills, and what does that help kids learn? Helps them take care of others. When
Mhm.
kids take care of others, they realize what's actually important in their own lives,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
And so not only safety, like personal safety kind of
Mhm.
stuff, right? When I go outside, if I have to worry about somebody else's safety, then I should worry about my own.
Mhm.
Then um first aid. So I do a lot of first aid. Being a police officer, I had a lot of first aid training. I had a lot of first responder training. I have experience with, like, what are things that happen in certain times of the year? Like, how can we be more safe? So I come from that perspective. But then what do you do when something bad happens, right? Is it
Mhm.
something you can handle yourself, right?
Right.
If you're taking care of others again, or if you're by yourself, you scrape your knee, how do you take care of that, right? That's
Mhm.
something you can handle yourself. And then
Right.
all the way escalating to call a backup adult, right? So
Yep.
why does this matter? Is because kids learn to ask for help. They
Mhm.
don't need somebody to handle it for them, but they do need help. So this helps them instill that asking for help is okay.
Mhm.
And then, like, maybe there's an emergency, and emergencies happen to anyone at any time, at any place.
Yep.
And for them to understand that, like, this could happen to the parent, could happen to you. But what do we do if that happens, right? And
Mhm.
then
Yep.
helping them distinguish and make that decision of, oh, is it serious and urgent, right? So if it's not serious and not urgent, they scrape their knee, they're crying, it's upset, it's horrible. How do I manage myself? How do I manage them, right?
Mhm.
To
Yep.
comfort them. And then what if it is serious? What if they had a laceration or broke a bone or something, right? It's serious, but it's not
Mhm.
urgent, right? They're
Mhm.
not going to bleed
Mhm.
to death in this situation. But then making that distinction.
Mhm.
Then also, what if it is super serious, super urgent, to the point of certifying kids in CPR? CPR and if someone's choking. Those are the two things that we can do, anyone can do to
Yep.
help. But what's hidden behind those skills? Taking action,
Mhm.
not getting paralyzed with fear, knowing what to do, having the experience, having the practice, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Understanding that this could happen to anyone and it's not personal to you.
Mhm.
And then we talk about managing behavior. And this is always you can start seeing the lights turn on with the kids when we start talking about behavior management.
Uh-huh.
Like, my parents do this to me, right? And so we have six skills that help kids manage behavior.
Mhm.
And then we talk about business because you and I, being both
Yep.
entrepreneurs, I think that having an entrepreneurial spirit is advantageous for life, for
Mhm.
people.
Yep.
When I look at the gift and everything that happened for my life, I'm actually being an entrepreneur in that moment to say,
Mhm.
how is that an opportunity? And
Mm.
how am I going to help use that to fuel me instead of hold me back? That's the same idea as an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yep.
So I help kids not just with babysitting, not just with CPR. They have to feed themselves during the day. And so I have a very intro cooking to baking class. We talk about cutting skills, boiling water, browning meat,
Mhm.
even cooking things from a box. There are so
Yep.
many people who cannot follow a recipe. And I do have some people who are like, but they're not making anything from scratch. I said, no, but they are being successful, easy attainable wins,
Right.
being successful with a 4-step recipe.
Yep.
And this does amazing things for kids. They've
Mhm.
done amazing things for the kids that have gone through that class. But then think about what on the flip side of that, morning, noon, and night, they can feed themselves if they have to.
Right.
They know
Right.
something that they can do,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then I teach a self-defense class that's coming up this weekend. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm only doing girls in that class. I'm hosting it at a church. I have a huge class coming through for this first girls only class. Really, it's about knowing your voice, how to use it, what does it sound like,
Mm. Yeah.
being able to distinguish personal safety things.
Mhm.
Um, and then also we're going to, at the very end, help them. Life is not about learning to fight, it's about learning how to get away,
Mhm.
and how to do that safely, and how to escape, how to position yourself differently, how to recognize what's going on, kind of read the room, as we say as
Yep.
adults,
Yep.
right? That's not a skill. Kids, because of the prefrontal cortex, they don't have that ability to
Mhm.
decipher. They can't even decipher scrunched eyebrows, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could be having a stomach ache and they're like, you're mad at me, right?
Right. Right.
They don't have that ability, right? They only feel, and so they think the scrunched eyebrows is that you're mad at them. They can't distinguish that, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, so that is self-defense. I'm pretty excited about that. I also have a mother-daughter event because I am one of three daughters, right? I have my own two daughters. This just really spoke to me. Last year I had a lot of interest in it. I posted it a little bit late.
Uh-huh.
But this year I'm on it. And so I'm excited about what's coming in this spring for that, and how that can only help other parents and mothers and their daughters connect on a different level,
Mhm.
accept that, accept the skin you're in and love it, right? And just
Right.
really blow up this idea of what does love mean and what does unconditional love mean.
Mm.
So I'm excited about that.
Yes.
And then in addition to the volleyball coaching, so I teach volleyball,
Mhm.
and I'm part of a program, super awesome. And we are starting to instill leadership and team building into the program.
Yay.
So they are not just strangers on the court,
Mhm.
right? There's so much more that can
Oh,
be
yeah.
done on the court. And so this program I'm super excited about it. It is not yet there, but it is up and coming, and I'm super
Mhm.
excited for the conversations that we're having around that. Because being a volleyball
Yeah.
coach, right? There's the game, and then there's, if we view life as a game,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And they
Yep.
have to coexist.
They have to coexist. Yes.
Sometimes we have coaches who don't believe that life happens, and right, and we have that exists, that the game is dispensable, right? But really, if we can believe that they are one and the same, and that they will help and
Oh,
benefit
yeah.
both parts,
Oh,
right? So we're
yeah.
trying to fill that gap as well.
Well, too, I
um,
mean, life, you bring crappy life onto the court, you got crappy volleyball skills, really. I mean, you can't work together. And
it
so that
affects
team
everything.
building. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it literally affects everything. And when we realize that everybody deserves to be treated with dignity,
Mhm.
trust is earned, kindness is earned, but everybody deserves dignity.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that sometimes is overlooked,
Mhm.
right? And I think that can think about where that can permeate to
Oh,
school
yeah.
life,
Definitely.
church life, if that's part of your life, family
Right.
life, right? Like
Well,
so many.
and I think too about how, like, sometimes these kiddos at that age just think everything is personal. Like, they take everything personally. Everything, everybody, whatever they say is a remark towards them. And we gotta teach them to think outside of themselves, like, what is
Yeah.
happening over here to, this person? Like, what's going on in their life? Just because you can't, like, the scrunched eyebrows, everybody's mad at me. Well,
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to learn how to read that, and we learn how
Yeah.
to ask
And
questions.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's really what my personal program is. So I
Mhm.
have some private clients that I work with
Okay.
pretty intensively in person. I also do it virtually. And that's really the distinctions that we get to, right? How to navigate our own emotions, how how do we react to other people's emotions, what's
Mhm.
in our control, what's out of our control.
Yep.
um, some of my clients have been bullied, some of them are on the other complete end of the spectrum, and
Mhm.
they're a hyperachiever. Okay, I
Yep.
come from that. I was a hyperachiever.
Yep.
But bad things still happened,
Mhm.
and life still happened, and I struggled with an eating disorder, and I struggled with things, being a hyperachiever, but underlying, there are some commonalities between
Yes.
both ends of the
Oh,
spectrum.
yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes. Yep.
That I help kids with, to move
Mhm.
them forward again, back to them feeling that they do have a sense of control. They can never truly have control over their
Right.
life, right?
Right.
We have
Right.
no control over other people's actions, other people's experiences, circumstances out of your control, driving in the car, getting in a car accident,
Right.
those kinds of things. But it gives them a sense that their choice
Mhm.
and how they react, the thoughts that they have, and
Correct.
the thoughts they listen to from others,
Mhm.
they have control over that.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Yeah. We feel like we're so out of control, but there are a few core things that
Mhm.
we do have control over, and we have to remind ourselves we do have control over our thoughts. We do have control over the information that we let in and how we choose to, what meaning we choose to give it,
Yep.
and the responses to it.
Yep.
And if we can manage those things, we can plow through life greatly, with a
Yeah.
few hiccups, but we just, get back on the track, and we don't have to let it stop us.
And I think perspective goes a long way.
Yes.
Right? Like perspective of thinking of others. And that's the part of like that empathy, emotions,
Mhm.
understanding other people's emotions, understanding that they are a completely different person with their own completely different lens, which gives them their own completely different perspective
Right.
of the
Right.
same situation. And this is something that I was kind of slapped in the face about when after my dad passed away, about 2.5 years ago. My sisters and I got together, and we remember being all in the same room, and yet
Mhm.
none of us remember it the same.
Yep.
And I have used that, and with that realizations with my own families, to
Mhm.
help other, like preteens and teens especially, but other families to
Yeah.
realize that like other people's perspectives, just being in the same room, they're coming to the room, maybe one's coming from, running late from work. Maybe one's coming from having a discussion with their girlfriend. Maybe one's coming from, something happening at work. We're all
Yeah.
coming with our own perspectives of the
Yep.
same situation, and we will not remember it the same.
Right. Right. We have our own experiences. We come in with our own little thought pattern, our own experiences. The emotions that we're coming in the room with can be different. And we experience it differently and we remember things differently. And it's amazing. It's amazing. How can people find you? Like where, if they're like, oh my gosh, I really love this. Like, where can I find more about Nicole?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. I am right now still completely word of mouth.
Mhm.
So I appreciate people like Peggy very much because she helps me get my mission and purpose out. But on social media is probably the best place. So at Nicole Grelecki, or I do have a Healthy Pie PI page
Okay.
that I would love for people to like. We're trying to get our followers up. We have a target of 3,000 followers that we are trying to hit, so we can just bring even more to our community that we
Great.
possibly can. So social media is probably the best way, at Nicole Grelecki or Healthy Pie.
Great. And we'll put those in the show notes. So people, if they you don't catch that, we'll put it in the show notes and you can click on it and take you right there. So as we wrap up today, Nicole, what is one, thing or something that you want to leave our listeners with?
I have a book. I have a book for, it's actually two books.
Okay.
It's for adults and it's also for preteens. And I really loved that he did this. So John Acuff
Okay.
is a author, and he started with the book called Soundtracks,
Okay.
which just by the title, you're like, okay, that's for an older audience because younger kids have no idea what soundtracks are. And he recognized that, which I love. And so during COVID, he and his teenage daughters
Uh-huh.
wrote this book,
Okay.
Your New Playlist. And so one of the things that I talked about today about flipping it,
Hmm.
is something that they talk about in this book. And I love Audible, and I love uh, listening to sometimes I like to listen to the authors. And this is one of those books
Okay.
because his daughters are on here. So
Right.
it's him and his daughters. So when and so he recognized this, and I love that about him because he was like, okay, people really want me to write something for teenagers, but that's not my jam. And so he went right into his daughters and the things he was having with his daughters, and allowed his daughters to write certain chapters, and they talk, and you hear their voice doing it. So I really love that about it.
Mhm.
But he has got some really great tips. So not soundtracks is for the adults. Your New Playlist is for teenagers. His very first thing that he talks about is not making the lacrosse team. And how do you navigate it? How do you deal with it? What are things that your kids are thinking in their head and they're not saying?
Yeah.
And then how do you manage it, and it's then how does it relate to other parts of your life? So I really love that, and I use it a lot because in my own way I have translated it into, what is that gift, how can I flip it, right? And it's a
Mhm.
choice. And I know you keep coming back to it is literally a choice. Like it
Right.
was a choice to get out of my head and get out of bed. It was
Mhm.
a choice to, I'm currently doing strength training. It was a
Mhm.
choice to go when my kids were home on break. It was my choice to show up and go anyway,
Yeah.
right? It was a
Yes.
choice to change that old habit of canceling because they're on break and going anyway. And we have that choice. It's something that I think is super important for our preteens and teens, a skill that is really hard to teach,
Mhm.
but there are creative ways that we can do it. For example, some of these other life skills classes that I teach,
Mhm.
um, that we all have a choice to continue to grow, continue to take risks, right? Continue to take risks, be brave enough to fail,
Mhm. Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
and still persevere and thrive and feel fulfilled in what we do in life.
Oh, so many great gems in this conversation. So hope our listeners can go back and re-listen to this, but everything's our choice and we have the power to create our own lives and be confident in it. And Nicole really helps, adults and kids and teens really find themselves and be the leader and the light in their world. So thank you again, Nicole, for joining me today. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time.
Thank you so much.